Hello, everybody. Happy iOS Tuesday. I'm super excited to be here with you tonight. And tonight I have a guest, Frank Foster. So we're gonna chat about iOS. We're gonna talk about like different things related to iOS. So and if you're joining and if you have questions for me or for our guests, feel free to pop them in the chat down below. So I normally get to all of the chat messages as soon as I can. Like a couple of housekeeping things. Please be respectful to the guests and to myself and to each other. We're here to just have a good time and talk about iOS development, not to insult each other or disparage. Just have a good time. So, but like,
Absolutely.
yeah, but so far, I've been leading iOS Tuesday for a few months now. So like I've never had anyone disrespectful. So let's go
Great.
ahead and start with you, Frank. Can you kind of introduce yourself and tell us about yourself, what you do, and
Yeah.
things like that?
So, hello, everybody. I'm Frank Foster. I've been an iOS developer professionally for the last year and a half now. Did I guess we can get into the full thing, but I transitioned from IT to software development during the pandemic. I was let go for my last IT job, and so I said, "Hey, this is the time to switch." And currently, I am an iOS developer at Rocket Mortgage. So I help work on some of their mortgage products, their loan products, and yeah, a lot of cool stuff.
Awesome, awesome. So, why iOS development? Why not web or why not Android or anything else?
That is a good question. I think so. Going rolling back in my history, I guess one of the first, I like to call it one of my first like big boy jobs, right? Like skipping out the dishwasher at the restaurant and the I used to work in a family fun center. I was one of the people who gave out prizes and stuff. But skipping past all that, my very first job that I spent the most time at was actually at Apple. I started as a sales specialist and then moved up to a genius, and just kind of generally fell in love with their products. So it just felt natural to say, "Hey, iOS development was the way to go." To pair with that, the University of Idaho. I live up in North Idaho, and the University of Idaho up here had a program started for adults that didn't want to go through a full degree, but they wanted to get people trained and certified in development, and they worked alongside Apple's education team. And they needed somebody to be a mentor for one of the groups up here. And they put out a call on Facebook and said, "Hey, anybody who wants to be a mentor for this, raise your hand." And I put my hand up and said, "I know nothing, but if you're willing to teach me or give me the material, I'll teach myself so that I can teach others." Just I felt like that was the best entrance point to kind of say, "Hey, if I'm going to learn coding and development, this is the way to do it, is to teach other people." So that was kind of my first entrance into kind of making the decision of saying, "Okay, iOS development is the way to go."
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's really awesome. And what difficulties you sort of like encounter when on your journey to iOS development?
Ooh. I think there's one that it's super relatable, but a lot of people don't acknowledge it as much, is the time issue, right? Like we all have lives to live, especially people who are in other careers and want to move to iOS development. A lot of us don't find that time commitment to be able to say, I'm going to code X amount of hours a day, or I'm going to put enough energy and effort into it. And that was honestly one of the biggest hurdles. It took me, I was part of this program. I started it in 2016, and or well, I think it was 2017 actually. And being part of that really was a challenge because you've got to commit so much time. You really have to like dedicate yourself to it. And we had our first daughter, and we got married, me and my wife, and we what else? Just life kind of threw a bunch of stuff at us, and it just is challenging, right? You've got to sacrifice your evenings, you got to sacrifice your sleep, you've got to kind of really dial through all that. So that's one that I think a lot of people acknowledge that it happens, but they don't say it out loud as often. Is that time commitment?
Yeah, I absolutely hear that because, like, when I was lucky because I was working with the iOS team and I was a QA engineer. So if somebody doesn't know, but time commitment, yes, I can hear that because, like, after work, like, not just like you have to work for like some amount
Yeah.
of hours, but after work, but and uh, mind you, like, I had to go to the office, so it was
Oh
before
yeah, yeah,
COVID. So, like, yeah, after commute, like, carve out like time to like code and practice and going through the tutorials. Like, it can be
yeah,
difficult, and at work you can't really do that because, like, you have responsibility, and also,
yeah,
like, at sometimes you have to do something different at work, like, iOS development related, but, like, you still need to, like, solve that problem and figure it
yeah,
out. So, like, I can certainly hear that. So, tell me about how did you land your first iOS development job? What was the interview like, and
yeah.
what kind of, like, how the whole process was?
Yeah. I mean, the very first kind of the experience that I had was I was already starting to kind of look for iOS positions sort of at the beginning of 2020. That was actually my goal that year was, okay, this is going to be the year that I finally make the switch away from IT because I had been after Apple, I worked for two other companies doing IT work. So I was help desk and system admin type stuff. And it was kind of at the beginning of 2020, sort of in January, before we all knew what was coming down the pipe. That I was like, all right, this is the year that I'm really going to like buckle down and start really learning the things that I need to know, and really kind of dedicating myself more, and in hopes that by the end of the year, I'd have an opportunity. And come April, the company that I worked for at the time, it was Rover.com. They it was in the middle of the pandemic, right? It was just at the start, and Rover was a company that developed an application for dog walkers. So you kind of like Uber, you can hire a dog walker and then they'll come to your house and walk your dog either when you're at work or whatever the case may be. And turns out that business model doesn't work so great in the middle of a pandemic. So they had to let a number of us go. And I was one of the people that was let go. So I kind of made the decision at that point. I said, all right, I now have this free time to really crack down and spend every day on it. And so I did. I pretty much from that point forward just focused on iOS development, really cracking down, really applying for jobs. I think by June or July, I had applied at close to 100 different places.
Wow.
So I had a good chunk of places under my belt and got only about 3 responses. Um, one of which just they had just a wild interview process that took months. Really, like they started in June and it didn't. They offered me a position in October after I had already gotten my first role. But the other job that I started at was at a smaller company called Gleason Technology, and Gleason, they're super chill, very cool company, very wonderful people to work with. And they reached out and kind of said, "Hey, we saw what you're asking on Twitter." I had just started kind of getting into Twitter and using it more and getting involved in the community there. And they reached out and said, "Hey, we saw your tweet and we've never done this before, but would you like to come in for an interview?" So really come in as far as be virtual in an interview. And the interview process was really easy. We did a little hey, build an app kind of thing. So show us your skills, show us what you can do. We'll do some pair programming. And by the end of the week, we had another interview with the team. They asked me some further questions, and the next week they offered me the position. So that was kind of the first start, and that was in September of 2020. So it was from April to September, I had been pretty much interviewing as like a full time job while I was unemployed. And that was the first point at which I land a role.
And what is the most difficult thing about interviewing as an iOS developer at that time, for
Yeah.
your first job versus like for your second job or
Mhm.
jobs after that?
Yeah, I think the two big things I think that I've seen in the process, is you have to prove at your first role, you really have to prove that you know what you're doing, right? Like, people are very hesitant, especially, I always like to say this is in the context of COVID, right? Like,
Hmm.
so your mileage may vary depending on where it is now versus where it was then. But this is, kind of when all the companies are trying to figure things out. But, the hardest part about being someone who's never been in the industry is kind of proving that you can be in that industry and showing that you have those skills, building that portfolio or showing people, in those interviews what you can do. And it becomes challenging too when the interviews aren't there's no consistency. So one place may be an entirely different experience than another as far as what they want you to do. It may be I had one interview that was 15 questions on a Word document that I had to answer in 20 minutes.
Wow.
And I had another one that was, it was Gleason was, show us a project, let's do sort of this take home thing and do it that way. And I had another one that was, a little more collaborative as far as like, hey, let's have more conversation and less technical uh less showing off of your technical skill. So I think those are the two things that really stood out to me, sort of on the onset. With later interviews that I did, both for Rocket and sort of when I was searching then, um, the interview process has become when you have that experience under your belt, it's more about culture fit, I think, as well as or what's called culture fit, I guess, and how well you'd mesh with your teams, and still kind of proving that, like, okay, you've got that experience, we see that on the resume, but what can you show us, what can you tell us about the work that you've done? So it's kind of a difference between, that hey, you have nothing tangible to show right now, you have no line item on the resume that says, hey, you know your stuff, or you've people have paid you to do this, to where you're at that point. So that's I'd say that's kind of like the two big pieces that I think kind of connect between then versus later in your career.
Yeah, like I've noticed that too. Like I think my difficulties with interviewing for iOS roles, um well, like here recently, because like
Yeah,
I interviewed here recently. I don't think that I had a lot of like difficult interviews. It's mostly
yeah,
when the interviewer hits like areas that like I'm not quite familiar with. For example, AV Foundation.
yeah,
I haven't worked with AV Foundation the whole lot. I like it was like well, at T-Mobile we touched AV Foundation a little bit, but like not to the point. Or at least I haven't touched that to the point that like I know all ins and outs
yeah,
uh, of that framework, or like really like kind of like trivia questions, like
yeah,
when it comes to like different like queues and like asynchronous operations and things like that, because like you normally like um at the mature code level, you may use KVO, or you may use RX Swift, or you may
right,
use like Combine, or like RX like libraries like Bright Futures, which is like
mm,
very similar to Future in Combine. So those things like they will handle that for you really
yeah,
well. So like you don't really have to know that. And I think my weakest point, I think my Achilles heel is algorithms and data structures.
yeah, oh
Like
yeah,
granted, like I haven't, like I don't know, like it's interesting. I think the more I, and again, it's just like January was crazy. I haven't applied for a single job. Well, I have applied for one job for one company that I kind of liked,
Yeah.
a lot. So like, well, like they reached out to me in the summer, and I wasn't ready yet, and I
Yeah.
was at Nordstrom, and I still like Nordstrom. So like, even though I left Nordstrom, I still love that company. So and
Yeah.
can highly recommend to anyone. So like by January, like, okay, I'm talking to other people.
Yeah.
Let's be just honest, and like let's get attention of that recruiter who was trying to get in touch with me. So but other than that, I haven't. And I think what in January, what I've noticed, like I haven't gotten a lot of like algorithms and data structures interview.
Yeah.
um Maybe because I didn't interview with Amazon, so like Amazon will be
Yeah.
Amazon, and like Thing, or I think it's Main
Yeah.
companies, like they like that, but it wasn't really the case. And then like I think over the years, even me being really bad at algorithms and data structures, I posted on LinkedIn like fairly recently a post like, if you are in a situation where you have an interview and you have to code something, you have no idea what to do,
Yeah.
make sure to start with the tests, because like
Yeah.
you can start a conversation with your interviewer, so you're not just staring at the screen like
Yeah.
uh wait a minute, like my thought process is
Exactly.
you just like, okay, like what we need to do, like uh, what I hear was like X, Y, and Z. Let's write a test, and tests can be really simple print statement, and you can come out the expected result.
Yeah.
And it shows your interviewer that like it's a like you are a mature developer, so like
Right.
TDD, test driven development, even though like I don't believe that if you don't use TDD you're not mature. You are,
Right.
but like it's a different approach to coding. And after I'm done with my tests, like I am like maybe one quarter, if not halfway there, because like, okay, like I already know what not to do, so I
Right.
can write a little code.
Something to show. Yeah.
Yeah, that won't do it. Now like the fun part, like to actually go ahead and do it. So,
Yeah.
and sometimes you will be surprised, sometimes like it was enough for like my certain interviewers, so like, oh, like we're done, we you good, like, so how will you
Yeah.
actually implement it? I'm like, okay, like, yeah, like do you have any questions for me?
Yeah.
I mean, that would happen at like Google or Amazon or Meta
Yeah.
for sure, but like I noticed that like the more senior you are, or like when you apply for like senior level or like team lead, people really want to know how you manage and mentor people, and like are
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
going to be a good match for that team, versus like can you traverse a graph.
Yeah.
So like that kind of part. And also like I had a little like I had a little bit different experiences in terms of the company sizes. I think it's also like um plays a huge role. I interview only with one big ish company, sorta, kinda, but like I don't know, like looks like in January all of the like medium size companies and startups, they just like blow up, and like, okay,
Yeah.
we have the money and we want to grow and we want iOS developers like
Yeah.
yesterday.
Well, I think, to that point too, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like there still is like a shift to moving away from a lot of the like data structures and algorithms because they're seeing that, I think there was something that was said like last year or the year before last, which is that there's just this dearth of zero seniors, seniors who are in their positions don't want to leave them, or they're looking for seniors and they just aren't there. When I was part of, as I've been part of this, I guess still part of this program that University of Idaho has put on, it was partially built because there's just no STEM jobs getting filled.
Hmm.
So those of us who are, or those who are now developers and are in those roles have either grown into those roles because of the pandemic, right? A lot of
Hmm.
people left the roles they were in and have come into, a new job or and have seen development as an opportunity that might provide more for them than what they were in before. Or we're starting to see a lot of people who left it and came back, or who are seeing these different shifts. So I'd really love to hear your thought on that too, because I feel that's a big impactor too, is this larger sort of shift in the environment that's saying, like, hey, we recognize that uh, the people are changing, and their experience is changing, and maybe the way we're conducting our company is changing. So the old school way of testing data structures, algorithms, more strict coding principles, and moving them to this sort of like team fit, opportunities to learn, how well do you mentor, how well do you mesh. I see a lot of that more too.
Mhm.
And even when I was interviewing after Gleason, that was something that I was starting to see too, is more of a question of who you are and how do you think, and less of a who you are and tell us this exact structured thing.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Like, so, a little like preface to like what happened, like in January when I was looking for a job in 2020. Like, I was a contractor at T-Mobile, and like I interviewed with quite a bit of companies too. And it was like back then I was more targeting like anywhere from mid-level to senior, like whatever
Yeah.
falls into my lap. But one company, like pretty big company, Hulu, interviewed
Hmm.
me, and the I was super nervous. I was super scared. But like the first route was conversation with the manager, and the manager is really technical guy, and he would ask me like things about testing, things about unit testing, things how do I approach like writing my UI and things like that. We like I feel like we kind of disagree with like programmatic UI versus storyboard, which is he said like Eugene, I'm not gonna argue and I'm not gonna fight you because we're going Swift UI. I'm like, yes,
Oh, there you go. There you
yes,
go.
yes.
The
And
beautiful
so
blend of both.
yeah, it's kind of like at my like now job, like at my current job now I'm a care rep. I've like this is my first week, and like I look at the like code base of, like, y'all using storyboards. Like, can I use my
Yeah,
UI in code because this is something that I do? It's like, Eugene, if it's new file, forget about storyboard, just do Swift UI. I'm like, okay,
there you
that
go.
works too. So, and like my second step was to create or build take home project, which is
Yeah,
was with a very difficult, like with a mildly difficult JSON, because like it was a little tricky, and like the whole like JSON structure, because like when JSON structure really well, like, it's really easy to decode, but when it's like
yeah,
super nested, super complicated, super like
yeah.
complex, and like
It makes
real.
those models more obfuscated.
Yeah, like
It's
this is where you have those, like this is where you need to build that like tree, like
yeah,
literally tree in your code, and like, okay, this is why I learned trees in data
yeah,
structures and algorithms. Like now I understand how to use it. So like that was a little difficult, but like I I was able to do that. And like what I did, like I reached out to other developers for like code review, like, hey, like, am I stupid, like what am I doing wrong? And like I was able to get it, like get there. And like the final round would have been to go and code together with the team, or
oh wow,
present your like app to the team. So no
sure,
data structures, no algorithms. Like the JSON itself was kind of difficult, and
yeah,
it was not trivial JSON, and like the like future development of that app. Like, oh god, like I need to make sure that like I can actually keep working with that JSON. So I was
yeah,
doing a little bit extra work, but like at the time, like COVID, they didn't have the budget was frozen, and
Yeah,
Nordstrom came came along and they made me an offer, and like already working with Nordstrom, and like Hulu, hey, like, do you want to continue? Like, no, like, because like I'm like 3 months
yeah.
into my new job, so, and I like my team. But like,
There
yeah,
you go.
I hear that, and like now, yeah, sometimes companies ask you like algorithms and data structures, but they're rather easy. Or
Yeah,
sometimes they ask you like kind of a little coding challenge,
yeah,
which is, like sometimes like you can figure it out, sometimes not. And I'm kind of embarrassed. Like one of my first interviews like in January was like um convert, I think like convert string to a number. So
oh yeah,
it's really trivial.
yeah,
And like I think what I did wrong, I didn't start with the test. I start like, like coding, and like, okay,
yeah.
let's do something really crazy with map and flat map and whatsoever. So, and like, and then like now, like when I'm thinking about it, like got like what I was doing, it was so simple. Like I would,
Yeah, mhm,
like I would need to do that. I wouldn't need to do that. But like, yeah, I agree with you. Like certain big companies, even, one thing I would have put out about Amazon, of in 2020, I had a take home assignment with algorithms and data structures, of course,
yeah.
and like somehow I put it together. Somehow they decided to interview me. Like I,
Oh wow.
I'm sure I'm like 99.9% sure I didn't do it correctly. The take home thing, I did not do it correctly, and I had all the resources available to me. So it's saying something.
Yeah,
So, and they said like, yeah, like let's interview. And a wonderful lady, like she interviewed me with like, okay, can you do like valid parentheses algorithm? Like yeah, like okay, and
I've
like
never even heard of that.
no, like so, like
No,
it,
no.
like it's a very very famous algorithm. Like so, like given a string of parentheses, you have to determine if that string is balanced. If you have
Okay,
like matching parentheses, it's all
gotcha.
over the
Okay,
leak code, and like yeah, I can probably make a video like on my channel, like how to solve the algorithm. It's like it's fairly simple.
I would absolutely watch it because my confession is that I've never touched lead code. I've never touched lead code. I've never touched what's HackerRank. I haven't touched any of those. So it's that's the other wild thing that I think is that lines up with that whole like there's no consistency thing, right? Where you would have that expectation of like, oh, everyone who's interviewed has ever touched these things, but I feel like I'm the outlier. Like I've managed to land two roles without ever, ever touching them.
I
So
am I'm
yeah,
so like this is my story with leak code and with algo expert. Like I have two, because like I'm getting paid fairly well. Why not sign up for both? And like
sure, yeah,
they ain't cheap. So with leak code, like I sometimes I sit down and I try to solve a problem, but at some point like I lose my patience and I go to discussions and
yeah,
answers, and like sometimes like, oh damn, this is what I was supposed to do, like makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. I need to memorize that algorithm because they're probably going to
yeah,
ask me, and I would create my little repo, so like that would be conveniently available to me, like on the
yeah,
background somehow somewhere. So but I don't know, like I like for well, in 2020, like I had a little bit more time to practice like those kind of questions, and like algorithm that in data structures like things. I uh I failed, I didn't pass. And uh, other interviews with like really good companies. They were more so like domain specific knowledge thing.
Yeah.
Like in January, it was just strictly like iOS, and those interviews, they were intense, but they were asking really deep questions. For example, how do you like, okay, you're working with a backend team. Explain
Yeah.
to your backend developer what kind of JSON do you want to see? Like how
Mm.
they have to develop like API
Yeah.
for
How do you
you to
speak to that team and make that
yeah.
work? Yeah.
And like how do you like what kind of issues may arise between those teams and
Oh, that's in production, that's absolutely a good thing to to ask somebody.
yeah. So like, and Nicholas said like same like I think it's in relation to like leak code and algorithms and data structures, but like like funny enough, like I had to perform as an interviewer like one like uh interview where I would have to
Yeah.
ask my interviewee to write an algorithm like on the coder pad.
Yeah.
And like sometimes what I've seen that like, well, granted it was an easy algorithm, and granted what I've seen in the past that people would just memorize certain things, and
Yeah.
they would speak to it really really well,
Yeah.
and like
They'd
but like
memorize the structure of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh, like yeah, like there is similar question on the link code. Like I
Yeah.
it's too bad. I didn't care to look at it. Like my approach was like, can they think and can they
Yeah.
problem solve? I don't even care like if they solve the algorithm or not. Like just like the way like I just want to
Show me
see
your
it.
thought process more
Yeah,
than
like how
show
they
me that
think.
you can reiterate a question. It's well, I think that goes to like so I've always been fascinated with like education as a whole, right? Like that's part of the reason why I wanted to be like a mentor in code is that um teaching people and the process of their learning, we have such a varied form of that in the US education. And one really old idea is this like idea of memorization, right? Like let's take ideas that we have and memorize it. Let's create
Hmm.
flashcards and memorize all these different things. And in practice, it doesn't work as effectively, to my opinion,
Hmm.
because we have this thing sitting right in front of us that can help us when those issues do come up, right?
Like it kind of reminds me my time in college. So, I went to like I have a master's degree in clinical psychology,
Oh, wow.
and um, the program like I went to my university in Russia, and it was like a part time uh, program, so it was a little bit
Okay.
longer. So, but like my professor, what she said like kind of like stuck to my core until this day. She said, like, you don't have to memorize all the like all the terms and like disorders and
Yeah.
diagnosis, because what I need you to do, like, you have to be able to find it quickly.
Yeah.
So, and our exams oftentimes were open book exam. We were giving certain problems or like certain like case scenario, like 33-year-old male with
Okay.
like I don't know, with like compulsive thoughts and or like trouble at work, whatever the case might
Sure,
be.
yeah.
And we would have to find that diagnosis in the books and like put together clinical analysis, and like that
Okay.
professor, she like, I mean,
That's
obviously
a great way
things.
to do it, I think,
Yeah, I
because it
agree.
forces you to, like, be more active in, like you said, the search for the information because, like, any doctor isn't expected to know every single medicine there is and the effects and what it's what the treatment's for. It's you don't need to have that catalog of information in a
Well,
sense.
with medical doctors, it's a little different. Like people actually
Well,
can
yeah, I
die.
can. Yeah, true, true, true. Yeah, it's a little different. I probably shouldn't talk about any profession I'm not like qualified to talk about, but in coding
With
it makes sense. In coding it
yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
with psychologists, it's more so like, yeah, like you absolutely have to memorize like the diseases, disorders, and symptoms, so like you can figure out like on the fly. But like certain information, like, and also like anatomy, physiology,
Yeah.
because like our medical professors were different. They were like, no, you gotta know.
Yeah.
You gotta, amygdala is amygdala. You can't confuse amygdala with anything else. So, and like that was a good combination of like memorizing and but like building the case. So when you work with a long term, like when you work with a client or when you work with a student, like
Yeah.
oftentimes like you see like certain pattern, and you have to do investigation. You have to conduct multiple like sessions and
Interesting.
discover things like the outside of your realm. For example, like somebody lived in like in a certain cultural um family or in a certain
Yeah.
cultural group, and now they experiencing certain issues. So I have to go ahead and study that group just to see like, okay,
Interesting.
like what do they do there that that
Yeah.
person exhibits certain things and why they not open up. And speaking to algorithms and data structures, what I would like to see, and I mean, I really wouldn't like to see, but like what would be appropriate, like if, for example, big companies like Amazon, Google, main companies,
Yeah.
like if they would say, hey, you can use anything and everything. If you want to use leak code and search, like look for that answer, like you
Yeah.
can, but you have to justify your code. It's like
Interesting.
PR or
Yeah.
MR, like because
Yeah.
well, like oftentimes we steal the code from uh, Stack Overflow or somewhere else,
Yeah.
but on our MR, when people ask like, "Why are you exactly doing it this way?" You have
Exactly.
to like answer like, "I'm doing this way because of X, Y, and Z." The
Yeah.
same thing I would like to be able to do during my algorithms and data structures, like interviews kind of thing, like look for answers and look for solutions, like, and I
Yeah.
would be able to find those.
Well, I think it's kind of like a lot of people get caught up in those as these like gateway answers. It's kind of this double-edged sword, I think, in the sense that you have like data structures and algorithms become this gateway for a lot of people into the profession, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you have to know it, you have to learn it, but they are daunting, and to a lot of people, just the name algorithm is this scary word. Not to say that it's any scarier than anything else we do, but it is something that can be, you know, uh, we work in an abstract world, and so you are
Mm-hmm.
introducing those further abstractions, and when you're finding that opportunity, it's hard, right? So, it's this double-edged sword of like you've got to learn these things to kind of meet that bar for a lot of places. And yet they're really just like these additional tools in the tool belt. Just like you said, it's just like our ability to justify our code in our PRs. Like you're not justifying the code as much as your thought on how the
Mm-hmm.
code should be integrated, right? And I'm very much of the school of thought that code is not just a logical thing. Like we create these logic pieces to it, but in a sense it's also very closely, I feel it's closely related to like writing fiction or writing anything,
Mm-hmm.
because you're putting your own personal style in there, you're putting your own knowledge, your own sphere of influence into that piece, so it becomes, this might sound grandiose, but it's a part of you that's being put in there. Right? So you're justifying yourself every time you put a PR and every time you promote hey, these are the changes that I made. This is what I'm adding. This is what I'm contributing, because you're all kind of working on this one big art piece that's supposed to make sense. Like people writing a book together, you know,
Hmm.
you've all got to have everything meet and match and mesh. And you can't have two flavors of paragraphs that have different conveyance of meaning. It may get the same thing across as far as mechanically, but it's that thematic approach. I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but that's the approach that I see it as. Like you are it's that's why it's so weird, because we can take code and say and look at it from an engineering, clinical, like technical perspective and say technically this is correct, or there's these areas that it works. But we can also look at it from that like personal creative side of, this is code that you have formed a structure and a methodology for that makes sense in your brain, so tell us why your brain's thought process on this is correct. So that I mean, that's where you mentioned psychology. I'd love to know your thought on the psychology of code in that sense, because that's interesting to me, where you almost are looking at a little glimpse of people's thought process of logic, right?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. I probably have to record like the whole like rambling iOS dev like podcast. Like it's probably a
Mm.
little bit longer than for YouTube. But psychology of code. Uh, well,
Yeah.
first of all, like I think you can clearly see like personality, like and uh, personality in the thought process of that person, because like I don't know about you, but when I look at my like when I work with a code base for a long time,
Yeah.
and I look at the code like, oh, this guy must wrote
They
this.
worked on that. Yeah.
Like oh, like I yes,
You don't even need to pull up get blame. You can just see it.
yeah. Sometimes it is true. Like certain styles and certain expressions, but when I like what I see like in terms of like coding and like psychology, it's a like it's a dopamine booster. Like when
Yes.
your
Oh, yes.
PR gets merged or when your feature gets approved, so you have that
Yeah.
huge dopamine like kick
There's no better feeling than
immediately.
when you solve a problem that's been bugging you for a week and a half and you
Yes.
finally solve it. It's the best feeling in the world.
Yes. And another part that I see, because people want to solve problems and people
Mhm.
want to move forward, and like of course like people want to look good in the eyes of like team and managers,
Sure, yeah.
whatever. Also coding can bring the worst, absolute worst in people, because I haven't seen that often, but when developers fight in the
Mm,
MR or PR, they
yeah,
fight, and
that's right.
sometimes it gets so ugly. Oh boy. Like I was lucky enough not to see those PRs the whole lot,
Yeah.
but like when I see that, and especially when like sometimes my like coworkers would like not willingly pull me into it and like, hey, like
Oh, yeah.
I address all of the comments, like can you look at it, like if everything looks good just approve.
Yeah,
And I see like really serious issues from like principal software engineer.
sure.
I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't think that you address all of those issues. So, how about you go ahead to that principal engineer and politely ask to pair with you
Yeah,
and resolve those issues, and then hit me up when he approves, I approve. Like
yeah,
that's how we're gonna work it out.
yeah.
So, but like sometimes it's just like I have seen people walk out of
Wow.
like of a job, like really
Wow.
just because like not over like single MR or PR, but like
multiple instances of
multiple instances.
yeah,
Yeah, like just like, hey, I'm done. Like, can I
that's
chat with
interesting.
you? I'm done. And then like the next thing I see is like goodbye email from that person. I've seen that
Wow.
too. So coding, it's an interesting concept, like in terms of personalities and psychology, like human
Yeah.
psychology. So you can bring absolute best in people. People collaborate together, people work together, people help each other and
Yeah.
mentor each other. But also, like, I think when you get to that like very senior level, when you know a lot of things, how to do a lot of things, and like you're a very capable developer, sometimes it's just my way or highway,
Right. Yeah.
like for a lot of people. And if it's like, if they're not able to band like the team, and
Right.
sometimes like when you work with a team of like 50 people, it's really hard to bend that team.
Sure.
Sometimes all you can do, like, either be flexible and say, hey, I don't know everything, so it's in
Yeah.
your way. Like, do I like the team? If I like the team, like, because
Yeah.
like to be honest with you, like to be absolutely honest with you, I work with brilliant teams. Like, I can rarely
Me too.
bash my teams, like rarely, because
Yeah.
like I had certain individuals that I deeply dislike, but like majority of the time, like
Yeah.
I work with good teams with a very, very, very few exceptions. I have not yet worked with my dream code base. I have not yet worked with my dream code base
I don't think
ever.
anybody ever has. I don't think anybody has. That's the thing. That's what I think a lot of people outside of tech don't realize is that you know, we're all working on these half-finished, unbaked mesh of ideas that are just molded into something and put out there, you know,
I,
and
I think
that
at
is
this
fun.
point, like, because I at this point, like, I just like, okay, I have to see the positive, right?
Yeah.
So like when I work with the smaller projects, oh, I can easily I can easily just navigate that space. Or when I work with a larger project, I can just learn architecture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I've been lucky enough that I haven't had all of the teams I've worked on have been amazing, and you know, the people that I work with now at Rocket are just, I mean, like you said, I work with some brilliant people. I'm in that same boat. It's incredible when you do have that mesh of like everybody coming together, everybody working on that same idea, everybody kind of collaborating and working with each other. The unfortunate reality that I experienced in IT in the past, and I think IT suffers from it more than development does, is those individuals that are almost gatekeepy of their knowledge. They're like, I'm the person who works on this thing. It's this security thing that's like, well, if everybody knows it, then I could be out of a job or whatever. And I found that, you know, there were a few people like that in my past jobs where people were gatekeepers of their little domains. And as a result, it caused problems, right? Like it caused friction between team members. It causes friction between what you're doing. Like we had you know, one piece of software, and I'm trying to keep it vague, so I'm not throwing anybody in my past under the bus. But we had one piece of software that like desperately we needed to move away from. It was just, you know, a big mess of stuff that was, you know, unnecessary. And the individual who worked on it was a specialist in that software. And so if we moved away from it, understandably they would have to learn and move to whatever the new system was that we'd have to do. And you know, they basically they fought tooth and nail, and they didn't want anybody to take over and like help merge anything or transfer anything. And the merge and transfer always had problems, and there was all these other issues. And you know, it just became this like heel dragging the rest of everybody down, because you'd have to wait. You're waiting for that person to do something, you're waiting for something to hit. And it really impacts people, it really does. When you don't have that other person in the team who's willing to kind of play ball and, like you said, be willing to be open, be willing to be, open-minded to new things. And that's the one thing that always astounds me is like we work in tech. Have you guys seen how often stuff changes? Like
Hmm.
I'm still trying to figure out WWDC 2019, man. Like 2022 is right around the corner. We gotta figure that one out here soon. There's gonna be a lot of new stuff to learn and stuff that'll impact us, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's always stuff that it's like we're in a constant state of reinventing ourselves, or reinventing the work that we do. So it blows my mind that there are people in those spheres that would be like, no, we're gonna stay in this tiny little bucket and do just that and not move outside of it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you because like I work with similar personalities people
Yeah,
like I don't know, one person, they wouldn't create GitHub repo to allow like GitHub like to allow pull requests to the tool.
really.
All people had to do is to zip your project and send it over. Zip your
What?
project and send it over. And like I wasn't like a senior. I
Yeah,
was I was a good mid-level engineer at the time, and like QA mid-level engineer. And I thought like this is just wrong. Like we have
yeah,
GitHub. Like this is
exactly.
just wrong.
I can just imagine the merge conflicts. Something gets named wrong.
Hmm.
Good gravy. That's a problem.
Yeah. But hey, like we are approaching, we're streaming for 51
Oh my
minutes right
goodness.
now. And before we go,
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw you under the bus a little bit. I
Uh-oh.
know that
Okay.
you are working with iOS Happy Hour. Is that
Yes, I
true?
am.
Yes, you are. Can you tell us a little bit about like iOS Happy Hour, what it
Sure.
is like, and like what y'all doing? Like, I know because I'm a
Yeah.
regular there, but like for people who don't know, and
Sure.
like how people can reach out to you and what all kind of beautiful things that you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, so iOS Dev Happy Hour is an event that we put on monthly. Typically, we have anywhere between, gosh, I think it's like between 1 to 300 developers show up from around the world. I mean, we've had people from Paris, we've had people from India, we've had people from Canada, from the US. I think we had somebody from Japan once. All over the world, people are coming to our events. So it's always exciting to see the diversity of ideas. But the purpose that we have is is to basically just kind of be an opportunity for people to mix, to mingle, to kind of talk about development, to talk about what they're doing personally. We help junior developers. We kind of we have what we call our breakout sessions. So we have usually a few either sponsors or guest speakers, typically people who are new to development, who just landed their first role, so that we can celebrate their win, celebrate them starting into this new industry. And the goal of it is really just to kind of be a mixer and an opportunity to network with other developers. I can say, yeah, there we go. Thank you for throwing that up. Uh, but it's a great place to either learn something new or to get started in kind of get started with iOS dev. We have our breakout rooms that are all themed now, or we do random ones just to kind of get people mixed and mingled. And it's just a great opportunity to kind of come together, hang out, and learn more about iOS development, and maybe teach some more, and maybe kind of get some more information about all different aspects of it. So just like Eugene, you put up there the iOSDevHappyHour.com. We have our next event coming up on February 26th. So in about a week.
Hmm.
So it'll be February 26th at 11 Pacific time. And we've got this time we're doing well, I think we've done giveaways in the past, but this time we're doing 2 Apple gift card giveaways. And we've got a couple guest speakers, and we'll be doing our breakout rooms. So if you are thinking about iOS development or new to iOS development or already in iOS development and want to come chat, we'd love to have you.
And also
Um,
like from like I from a different standpoint, it's an amazing opportunity to promote your company because like, I
Mhm.
think
Yes,
y'all have that option, so they
we
have to
do,
connect
yes.
with one of organizers and like talk talk all the things, talk all the details.
Yes,
Because like when I was working at Nordstrom, I was pushing to participate, like to
that's
uh,
right.
sponsoring iOS Happy
Yeah,
Hour, and we had an amazing result from that because like at some point, I don't know, I think you were in that conversation. I don't remember if you were,
I
weren't.
was, yeah, we've had you guys, we had Nordstrom's, reach out, and you were part of that. I was in it briefly in the Slack conversation about it, because
Yeah.
we also have a Slack, for those who don't know, we have a Slack with all sorts of great opportunities there, job postings. We actually have a team that got started there who's doing an accessibility project. They're adding accessibility to, an open source repo. But and I'm actually one of the like managers of the Slack, so I help keep the chaos as best as I can. But the rest of our admin team, we have 5 admins: myself, Alex Silver, Ting Becker, Michaela Karen, and Chris Wu. And we all kind of work together to maintain the event as well as maintain the Slack. But we do have sponsorships. We have sponsorship ranges depending on what your company would be interested in, and we do give you a spotlight. There's different things that we do depending on the sponsorship range. But if you have a company that wants to sponsor us, definitely reach out to myself. Go to the iOS Dev Happy Hour site, or you can hit us up at iOS Dev Happy Hour on Twitter, because you can speak to it as far as the response. Because I feel like we have a lot of people who come, who are looking either for roles or information about roles, or having an opportunity to have a company come and talk about what their job is. It helps break down those barriers. I think a lot of people think it's really impossible to like reach to some place, and we've had
Yes.
some big names. We had Twitter, we had Capital One, Nordstrom's, Apple even came and gave a talk about accessibility as well. So we try to do our best to get some really great speakers when we can, and we would love to have anybody else who would love to join us too.
And the result of sponsoring and like really opening up to talk about your company and like have your breakout room sessions is just incredible. We had so many applicants that like Sam, our director, he said like we need a little bit more time to sort it out. Like we will sponsor next time,
Yeah,
but market is pretty hot right now, so it's really
yeah,
hard to like find developers, and it's definitely like a candidate market right now. So,
yeah.
and if you wanna like add a little bit more creativity to your recruiting process, iOS Dev Happy Hour is really like the way to do it.
Oh, thank you, Eugene. Yeah,
So, on that note, I would like to really thank you for coming in
yeah. Thank you
to,
for having me.
yeah, like it was, we had a great discussion, like, because before that, like, oh, like we kind of both tired, so it's probably going to be like 30 minutes. So like, well, like,
Lucky.
I'm actually done right now, and like we were writing for almost an hour, so I really
Yeah, it
appreciate
flew
you.
by. No, I love talking about this stuff, and I'm glad you had me on. It was really enjoyable. So thank you.
All right, thank you, and I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, y'all.
Bye.